Fragments of Truth. Introduction. The nature of truth. Fragment of Truth is a philosophical, psychological, and social exploration of truth, not as a single fixed reality, but as a collection of broken, subjective pieces shaped by perception, memory, culture, power, and emotion. The book challenges the traditional belief that truth is absolute and instead argues that human beings live within partial truths, each fragment influenced by personal experience and social conditioning. The author presents truth as something humans constantly seek, but rarely possess in full. Every individual holds fragments, never the whole picture. These fragments can conflict, overlap, or deceive. Through historical analysis, psychological insight, philosophical reflection, and real-world examples, the book examines how truth is formed, distorted, weaponized, and sometimes lost entirely. The central question of the book is not what is truth, but rather why do humans need truth and why do they fear it at the same time? Chapter 1. The Illusion of Absolute Truth. The opening chapter dismantles the concept of absolute truth. The author explains that while science and mathematics aim for objective truths, human life operates in emotional, cultural, and psychological dimensions where certainty rarely exists. The chapter discusses how ancient civilizations believed truth was divine, how religions framed truth as sacred and unquestionable, how modern societies replaced divine truth with institutional truth, governments, media, education. The author argues that every era claims to own the truth, yet history repeatedly proves those truths incomplete or false. What one generation defends as unquestionable fact, another later condemns as ignorance or manipulation. Truth, the author claims, is contextual, not universal. Chapter 2. Perception, the first fragment. This chapter focuses on perception as the foundation of fragmented truth. Human beings do not experience reality directly. They experience interpretations filtered through senses and brain processing. Key ideas include two people can witness the same event and remember it differently. Memory is reconstructive, not reproductive. Emotion alters perception more than logic. The author references psychological experiments showing how easily perception can be manipulated. Optical illusions, false memories, and emotional bias demonstrate that what we believe to be true is often what we feel to be true. Thus, the first fragment of truth is personal perception, which is already flawed. Chapter 3. Language, the distortion of meaning. Language, according to the book, is both a tool and a trap. Humans rely on language to communicate truth, yet language itself limits and reshapes meaning. This chapter explores how words simplify complex realities, how language differs across cultures, how translation alters truth. The author explains that many conflicts arise not from disagreement over reality, but from disagreement in definitions. Words like freedom, justice, love, and truth carry different meanings depending on cultural and personal context. Language fragments truth by forcing infinite complexity into finite symbols. Chapter 4. Memory, truth rewritten by time. Memory is presented as one of the most deceptive fragments of truth. People trust their memories deeply, yet memory is constantly changing. The chapter explains how memories are influenced by later experiences, how trauma reshapes recollection, how nostalgia edits reality. The author argues that personal identity itself is built on selective memory. Humans remember what supports their self-image and forget what threatens it. Over time, people begin to believe in edited versions of their past. Truth, therefore, is not only fragmented, it is rewritten. Chapter 5. Emotion, the loudest fragment. Emotion, the author claims, often overpowers reason in determining what people accept as true. This chapter examines fear-based beliefs, desire-driven truth, and anger as a lens of distortion. People tend to accept truths that comfort them and reject truths that challenge them. Emotional satisfaction becomes more important than factual accuracy. The book argues that modern society increasingly rewards emotional truth over objective truth, especially in media and politics. Chapter 6. Social Truth and Collective Belief. Truth does not exist only in individuals, it exists collectively. Societies create shared truths that hold communities together. The chapter discusses national myths, cultural narratives, historical storytelling. These shared truths provide identity and unity, but often suppress inconvenient facts. The author highlights how societies selectively remember history, glorifying victories while ignoring crimes. Collective truth is powerful but dangerous because questioning it often results in social punishment. Chapter 7. Power and the Ownership of Truth. This chapter explores how truth is controlled by those in power. Governments, institutions, corporations, and religious authorities often decide which truths are promoted and which are silenced. Key themes include propaganda, censorship, and manufactured consent. The author argues that power does not always lie. It often tells partial truths which are more convincing and harder to challenge. By controlling narratives, power structures shape public reality. Truth becomes fragmented intentionally. Chapter 8. Media and the Marketplace of Truth. Modern media is described as a marketplace where truth competes with entertainment, ideology, and profit. The author analyzes sensationalism, algorithm-driven information, and confirmation bias. The author argues that people no longer search for truth, but for validation. Media platforms feed users fragments that align with existing beliefs, deepening division and reinforcing illusions. Truth becomes personalized, not universal. Chapter 9. Science and the Humility of Knowledge. Unlike other systems, science is praised for acknowledging uncertainty. However, even science produces provisional truths. The author explains scientific truth evolves. Hypotheses replace certainty. Knowledge expands through error. Science offers the most reliable fragments of truth, but only when practiced ethically and humbly. When science becomes politicized or commercialized, it too fragments truth. Chapter 10. Morality and Ethical Truth. Moral truth is one of the most fragmented forms. What is considered right in one culture may be wrong in another. This chapter discusses moral relativism, universal ethics, and cultural conditioning. The author does not deny morality, but argues that moral certainty often blinds people to complexity. Ethical truth requires empathy, reflection, and openness rather than rigid judgment. Chapter 11. Identity and Self-Deception. The book turns inward, examining how individuals lie to themselves. Key points include ego protection, identity narratives, fear of self-awareness. People construct identities that depend on certain beliefs being true. Challenging those beliefs feels like an attack on the self. Therefore, humans unconsciously avoid truths that threaten identity. Self-deception becomes a survival mechanism. Chapter 12. Love, Relationships, and Emotional Truth. Truth in relationships is explored as deeply complex. People often hide truths to preserve connection. The chapter explores honest versus kind truth, emotional honesty, fear of abandonment. The author argues that emotional truth sometimes conflicts with factual truth. Relationships survive not on full truth, but on negotiated truth. Chapter 13. Trauma and Broken Truth. Trauma shatters truth. Victims often struggle to articulate their experiences. This chapter examines silence, denial, psychological fragmentation. Truth after trauma is often incomplete, painful, and non-linear. Healing requires patience and acceptance of broken narratives. Chapter 14. The Search for Meaning. Humans seek truth not just for knowledge, but for meaning. The chapter discusses existential truth, purpose-driven belief, faith, and doubt. The author suggests that meaning often matters more than accuracy. People choose beliefs that make life bearable. Chapter 15. Accepting Incomplete Truth. In the final chapter, the author argues that wisdom lies not in possessing truth, but in accepting its incompleteness. True intellectual maturity involves humility, curiosity, tolerance for uncertainty. Rather than clinging to fragments as absolute truth, humans should learn to assemble them carefully, knowing the full picture will always remain unfinished. Conclusion: living with fragments. Fragment of Truth concludes with a powerful message. Truth is not something we own, it is something we approach. Every human life is lived among fragments, some inherited, some discovered, some imagined. The danger lies not in fragmented truth, but in pretending fragments are whole. The book ultimately calls for intellectual humility, empathy toward opposing perspectives, and courage to face uncomfortable truths. In accepting the truth is fragmented, humans may finally learn how to live honestly with themselves and with others.